So welcome everyone. It's Monday, October 11th, 2021. And we're going to call our meeting to order at 5:32 p.m. All right, so next up is roll call.
Okay, Sarah Linda Kaiser,
I'm here.
Lydia Del Florio, Stephanie Schumann, Vanessa Van Coor, Kelly Roper is present, Manuel Magana,
Present.
and Andrea Thompson,
I'm here.
Ashley Wade,
Present.
and Rabbi Benjamin Zober is going to be absent tonight. Okay.
Thank you for that, Kelly. No, Rabbi. All righty. So moving on to, we're just going to dig into it, team. I'm so glad you're all here tonight. We're moving into our possible action items. First up is 2.01, approval of the minutes for September 13th, 2021. That was our meeting 1 month ago. Any discussion on that item?
This is Sarah Linda Kaiser. For the record, I just wanted to point out there is a misspelling of my name in 2.01 in the motion, or the second. It's second. That's all.
Thank you for pointing that out. That's important. Okay, would we have any possible motions on this item? Or I guess I need to ask for, is there any public comment on this item?
Not at the moment.
Thank you. Give it a minute. Thank you. Do we have a motion for the approval of the minutes or not? Yes,
I,
Kelly.
Kelly Roper, approve that we move that we approve the minutes with the correction of Sarah Kaiser's name.
Thank
I
you.
second that motion.
Thank you, Manny. Okay, so all in favor of approval, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Or nod your head. I like that. That was good.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion to approve the minutes by Kelly, seconded by Manny, passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay, item 2.02, presentation and discussion of the revisions from our meeting on September 13th. And so just a reminder, we will be looking at and discussing only the revisions that we had asked to see if, how that looks and what we think now.
Rochelle Proctor for the record. Okay, so I'm going to do my best. Hold on, let me bring up the lesson and walk through all of the committee suggested edits. That was fun. I got to listen to the whole meeting again, so thank you all. But you all had such great input. So I am going to scroll down to our first page of edits. And I'm trying to multitask here and look at, okay, so I believe one of our first edits was making sure that the term conflict was defined. And I think that was a Manny comment, right? Conflict, disagreement between two or more people, so that's added. Moving on to the next slide, what can make communication difficult? I know there was discussion on adding more as far as, and it's on the bottom, so it's none of their business, won't take no for an answer, someone is angry and it has to be their way. And if you want, I can go back and forth from the original notes. I'm not sure, are you okay with just the edits that I'm going over with? Okay, okay. And then moving on, types of communication. I believe it was Sarah Linda that wanted to make sure that with verbal, we had in parentheses speaking was added and or nonverbal cues. Is there a typo? Where? Okay, after verbal speaking. Okay. Hold, please. Yes.
There's only a closed parentheses on there, and so I don't know if it should be removed or there needs to be an open parentheses. At the very end, nonverbal cues, probably just remove the parentheses.
Okay,
No.
okay.
Kelly,
here?
look up at the top. That's not a typo. It
Where am I
bullying,
looking?
right after
Oh.
bullying, it goes parentheses and then it finishes right there.
Okay,
But yeah,
so
there's
I
a,
will make sure that I add it on the.
Sarah Linda.
Okay. So right here.
Oops,
This
you're
is,
muted,
that's
Sarah.
it? Okay.
1
I
second,
can't add it
Rochelle.
on here since it's. Yeah. Okay, I'm
Rochelle?
sorry, Ashley, what did you, what?
This
Yes,
is Sarah Linda
sorry.
Kaiser for the record. I'm sorry, but this matters. That verbal, rather than speaking, I was looking for words. So that we can, if it's like online words as well, it doesn't have to be spoken.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And it does, I'm not sure how much it matters, but that was what last month, I was thinking the difference between the words and all the nonverbals. That's where I was trying to go with that.
So exactly how would you like me to put it? Using words?
Replace the word speaking with words.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on. Okay, I think the next one is slide 8. Let's see. How to respond when you are told no, you may not like the answer, but you must respect the other person's response of no. Lydia, I think this was you too that we're discussing this one specifically. Look at the person, say, okay, stay calm, walk away, go talk to someone. Does that sound about right? As far as options, when someone receives a response of no? Okay. And now we are on to slides 10 and 11, and I'm sorry if this is making anybody seasick here as I scroll through. Slide 10 on consent, if not a yes, anything else is a no, correct? Okay. And then on consent, consent includes knowing and respecting a person's own boundaries as well as the boundaries of others. And consent can be taken back at any time. Is that looking right? Okay. And then scrolling through Space Invaders and on to page 11. Let me see. Down here, 2 of the bullets. At the end of the activity, lead the participants in a discussion about their experience by using these or similar questions. And the 2 at the bottom that were added was, did your partner ever make you feel pressured, coercion to move because they thought it was a race or a game to win? And then did you stop when your partner said to stop? Or you could tell you shouldn't get any closer, or did you keep moving towards them, disrespecting their boundaries? And I think Ashley had a discussion about that as well. Does that sound about right? Okay.
Beautiful, thank
And
you.
I believe, pardon me?
Beautiful, thank you.
Oh, okay. On to slide 14. The trigger warning, adding that in at the top. The remainder of the lesson deals with sexual assault. You may have students who find the topic triggering. In that case, please allow students to dismiss themselves. Okay. And then I did the whole caution. So it kind of stops in the middle there. And then we are on page 14. Under sexual assault and rape, let's see, it is the sub bullet, I guess you would say. The situations could include family members, friends of your parents, people who are in leadership positions, persons in authoritative roles, or strangers. Yes.
Kelly, I just reading through those people, I know this is, I just from fiction I read and from experiences I've heard from friends. Could you also say, a friend's sibling?
Okay.
I know of a friend that was sexually assaulted at a sleepover by the sibling, like an older brother.
Okay. Are we good to go on? Okay. And then slides 16 and 17. Sexual assault is any type of sexual activity or contact, including rape that happens without your consent. Rape, attempted rape, sexual coercion, sexual contact with a child, fondling or unwanted touching. And then the additional sexual assault slide. Sexual assault can also be verbal, visual, or non-contact. It is anything that forces a person to join in unwanted sexual activities or attention. Peeping, when someone watches private sexual acts without consent. Exhibitionism, when someone exposes himself or herself in public. Sexual harassment or threats, forcing someone to pose for sexual pictures and sending someone unwanted texts or sexts, texting sexual photos or messages. I think you all wanted a little bit more information clear so that they would understand. Yeah. Manny, you're thinking.
I was just thinking, maybe at the bottom of that, we add this includes social media, because texters texting, they might be like, well, I don't text people. But that way they know like messages of any kind aren't acceptable.
Okay, so under the sending someone unwanted texts or sex, put social media, how would you?
This includes over direct messaging over social media.
Okay,
I think given their age, there's no such thing as wanted sex to be like, that doesn't exist.
Okay.
Like sending pictures of your body and you are a minor is a crime, no matter if it is wanted or not. So
Okay.
maybe we just need to, it's not about being unwanted.
right. So sexual assault can also be verbal, visual, or non-contact. It is anything that forces a person to join in unwanted sexual activities or attention. How would you like that reworded?
Maybe I could ask a clarifying question on that.
Mhm.
In terms of the unwanted texts or sex, obviously, and I know that we're thinking pictures, but unwanted texts, were you also thinking, Rochelle, that it was like them maybe making sexual innuendos or anything like that? Was that kind of the premise behind the unwanted text?
As far as the sending photos and such?
Not just the sending photos, but the unwanted text. Were you also thinking sexual words or like saying something sexual to somebody? Was that what you were referring to on that part?
So like in the parentheses where it says texting sexual photos or messages?
Yeah, just want to just make sure that's what
Okay.
you were referring to on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those are probably two different things just in terms of legally, right?
Okay.
That I don't think it's a crime for a fifth grader to text sexual words to another kid or something, but if they were to send a photo of their private parts or something to another kid, then it can be.
Would that be a really gray area though? Because it could be harassment. If there are sexual words, right?
Yeah, sexual words could, but just it's not like you can just blanket say, if you're under the age of 18, it is illegal for you to send
Right.
sexual words like that. But it is it's
Right.
considered child pornography
Uh-huh.
if they send sexually suggestive photos or
Okay.
explicit photos.
So sexually explicit, do you think we should add that word? I mean, explicit in there?
It looks like they might have ideas. Go for it.
Okay.
Go for it. Yep, Kelly.
Kelly Roper, for the record, what this conversation makes me think about is slide 20, which says, important, you are not legally old enough to consent to any sexual activity with anyone, no matter how old they are, older, younger, or your same age. So I thought that was really good wordage. And so I don't know if, because repetition is good, I don't know if similar wording But you said it very well in slide 20 in regards to consent. Maybe
Add it in.
use it. So slide 20, you are not legally old enough to consent to any sexual activity. So if you take that, sorry, I'm trying to find that slide. If you said something like, you are not old enough to legally send out naked pictures of yourself or anyone else at this, I don't know, at this age, but that wordage was really good in regards to consent.
Let's see
So,
what Sarah has to add to that. Thank you, Kelly.
Am I unmuted? Yes, I am. Okay. Sarah Kaiser for the record. I'm wondering on this particular bullet point, what happens to this idea if we just take out the two words unwanted and texts and or, so that it reads sending someone sexts, parentheses, texting sexual photos or messages. Since I think Lydia's concern was the unwanted part of this bullet point, that doesn't matter whether it's unwanted. What if we just took out unwanted texts or?
I agree with that. Manny?
I like that. I think that would work out really well and it'd get it clear to the point. I also know that I saw Stephanie, she had a comment she wanted to make too.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Thanks, Manny. Stephanie Schumann for the record. I think we may just want to also look at your definition. Sexual assault can be also verbal, visual, or non-contact. It is anything that forces a person to join in any sexual activities or attention, and just remove unwanted. If we're good, I think it's important to use consistent language and remove it from both. It's quite common in situations where sexual abuse is occurring, where the sexual abuse could be wanted, but the child still can't consent. So I think it could leave the child with a very confusing message, thinking that something must be wrong with me because I did not want it.
Vanessa?
Vanessa Vancor for the record. The slide prior to this one, also in the final bullet says fondling or unwanted touching. I would say probably removing unwanted from there as well for consistency and for the points that Stephanie just made.
Lydia, how does that fly with what you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I'm probably overthinking it for a fifth grader, right? But it's not illegal for their older siblings necessarily, or their parents or whatever, to engage in sexting. We just looked it up in the Nevada sexting law, NRS 200.737 says, Nevada's law against sexting by those under the age of 18. This law makes it unlawful for a minor to knowingly and willfully use a device to transmit or distribute a sexual image of themselves to another person, or use a device to transmit or distribute a sexual image to another minor, or, and it's not showing me the rest of the sentence. Or possess a sexual image that was transmitted or distributed as described above.
So it sounds like removing unwanted would be pretty consistent with that as far as the pictures goes. And it's definitely a conversation I have with my kids, like you're 10 and have some kind of a device now that talks to the outside world. Let's talk about, right? Like you will be breaking the law. Are there any opinions or thoughts or understandings on the rest of it though? If we remove unwanted from the any of the, that's good. Kelly?
Yeah, I liked it. I was gonna say force is there. So if someone's forcing it, then I think that is a pretty strong word that it helps make, I mean, like we're taking out unwanted, but I think force shows that it's unwelcome, illegal, that kind of stuff. So I think that it's all right.
Okay. Thank you everyone for
Maybe
go ahead.
maybe you could just put a, not in the actual slide or anything, but even a note to the teacher in there that this is what the law says about sexting, and that way the teacher just has that information should it come up in the classroom.
Okay, Kelly?
Kelly Roper for the record. I didn't realize that I missed something when I let it go by talking about boundaries. And I know that I didn't want to change anything on the slide. I just wanted to maybe in the teacher notes when we were talking about boundaries, I know I wanted it in the older ages in regards to, let's see, has anyone ever had their boundaries crossed? Can you recall? Asking for permission, seeking consent, reminding people, like I think in here somewhere is the idea that we're trying to ask them to kind of figure out what their boundaries are and to be aware of boundaries. And maybe in a note to the teacher that they might say like kids, if you don't figure out what boundaries you have, they're gonna get crossed. It's gonna get crossed without you realizing it was a boundary. I don't know if that would fit in a note anywhere. The page, it was slide 9, so page 8 maybe is slide 9 has boundaries. And then, probe for examples of personal boundaries, physical contact, personal space, language when someone uses or borrows your stuff without asking. Like maybe like a hollow bullet teacher note, just advising the kids it's important to figure out what your boundaries are so that they do not get crossed without you
think that-
realizing.
I think that
Go ahead.
might, if that was not an edit that we had sent to Rochelle before, then we might not be able to discuss it at all tonight because the way it's worded on the agenda, I don't know.
Okay, I thought she taught, maybe we went all the way by boundaries and so it didn't.
I don't know.
If it cannot,
her.
and I totally understand that. I probably let it go, but that's okay. If I
sorry.
didn't mention it and you can't put it in, that's okay. If it wasn't part of changes before, no worries.
Kelly, I can also go back and listen again during that part, just to make sure.
And Kelly,
Okay.
to reassure you on that, when this lesson is taught, I can tell you that that is a conversation that happens automatically when they talk about boundaries. The teacher should know that like conversation about boundaries probably needs to be had, not just even if it's not mentioned in there, because if they don't know what boundaries are, a lot of kids will go, well, what are boundaries? And you go, this tape right here on the floor, this is my boundary. You stay on your side, I stay on my side. That's an example of it. I mean, simple things like that, that should promote questioning from the students where they're going to want to know, and that's the easy way to segue into it. But I understand where you're coming from if you're worried about it, but it should automatically happen.
Thank you both for that.
Okay. Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
But before we go on, can I ask a clarifying question from Stephanie when you brought up the engaging in sexual activity, right? And perhaps the child isn't not wanting it, right? So I was looking at you for the bullet on forcing someone to pose for sexual pictures. How would that fall also under that line of thought?
Stephanie Schumann for the record, I would think it would be best to avoid using a lot of those words associated to force. Oftentimes in those situations, research and experience shows that there's not a heavy level of physical force occurring. And I think we could be sending some concerning messages to maybe children who are already experiencing these really vulnerable situations.
Okay.
So I appreciate you bringing that up, and it might be more appropriate to say encouraging someone to pose for sexual pictures. I don't know what the group thinks of that.
Stephanie, what if we just said taking sexual pictures of someone? Because even if it's not like taking it all, it's still bad.
That's great. That's awesome.
Good thinking.
Thank you. Okay, and on to page 16. Sexual assault can include any type of sexual contact with someone who cannot consent, such as someone who is underage, as defined by state laws, has an intellectual disability or is passed out, such as from drugs or alcohol, or unable to respond, such as from sleeping, any type of sexual contact with someone who does not consent. Rape, attempted rape, and this was the teacher note, and I think we added on because there needed to be clarification for the students, if I'm not mistaken. Sexual contact with a child. So this was just more notes for them as well, and where the information came from so that they could go back and research it if there were more questions. So sexual assault can also be verbal, visual, non-contact. It's anything that forces a person to join in unwanted. So there goes that question, that word again, forces. I'm assuming we should have discussion about that. To join in unwanted sexual activities or attention. Other examples can include voyeurism or peeping, exhibitionism, just like what we had on the slide. So removing, I'm assuming removing that term forces and the unwanted. Okay. Uh-oh. Kelly.
Kelly Roper, for the record, I am lost track of every time somebody mentioned unwanted. And it's also in sexual assault can be verbal, forces a person into unwanted. Like it's, oh wait, you just did that. It was somewhere else. It was,
What we just talked about, I think.
okay. I wanted to make sure that that was the one you were talking
Yeah.
about. I got ahead of myself and didn't realize.
I was just keeping up with the teacher notes to follow along with the PowerPoint. Mhm. Got it in the PowerPoint. And this was just the teacher note part? Okay. And moving on to page 18, I believe is our next edit. Sexual consent is an enthusiastic yes. I believe you wanted to have that added. And consent can always be taken back. What was a yes can change into a no at any time. Correct, Manny? Okay. And then you are not legally old enough to consent to any sexual activities with anyone, no matter how old they are, older, younger, or your same age. If you sexually assault someone, younger, older, or the same age, you are committing a crime, just like if someone were to sexually assault you. I believe that was also part of our discussion. And you want it different colors? Are those fine? Are those calming colors? Okay. And then the resources, I believe we wanted to add, take a pick. So our local ones, as well as love is respect. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Rochelle. I was just messaging, or I was just talking with Andrea, our legal counsel, and she said boundaries is definitely one of the revisions we had sent to you before. So Kelly, if that were something you wanted in there, that's absolutely on the table for discussion.
Okay. To the boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's the title of the lesson. Okay. But I explained to Kelly I would go back and listen to the audio too, just to make sure and address it
Okay.
if there is.
Awesome. Okay, so Louise, do we have any public comments, or have we received any public comments since the meeting started?
No, not at this time.
Okay, and the committee did receive one email comment earlier today, so if you've not read that, you can take a minute to do that.
Was that public comment, the email that we received today on this particular
Oh, I don't know if it was or not. Well, maybe. I remember it being
No, it was for general.
general. Okay, never mind. Unread it. Okay, so we might have further discussion. I feel like we discussed as we moved along. So if anyone had a motion, I'd be happy to hear it.
Kelly Roper
Kelly?
for the record. First, I just wanted to say, like, I just loved the changes that Rochelle made, and I just feel like this is why we have these discussions and then trust her to make the changes because she did an excellent job. I move that we accept this lesson, making the changes words, not speaking, adding that you could be sexually assaulted by a friend's sibling. And then Manny, you wanted including social media somewhere. I just wrote that down. I'm not exactly sure, but I know you wrote it. And then so it was in regards to the DMs, making those changes. And if I've missed some, friendly amendment me.
Fair enough. Thank you. Go for it, girl.
Vanessa Vancouver for the record. I just wanted to add a friendly amendment on
Oh.
slides. Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
Second first, and then we can discuss that.
Andrea Thompson, I'll second.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so now we're in a discussion period, and Vanessa, now would be a great time to bring up a friendly amendment.
Thank you. I wanted to add a friendly amendment to the motion to include removal of the words unwanted on slide 16 and 17, and as well as in the teacher notes for that section. And then Manny also had an edit to slide 17 around removing the word forcing and instead saying taking sexual pictures of someone.
I accept those amendments. Am I allowed to remember there was another thing that we were supposed to do, which was take out sex? The text. Oh, was that the social media? I just wanted to make sure I covered that. Okay, I accept your friendly amendment.
So do we. Andrea Thompson.
Wonderful. Further discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion by Kelly, seconded by Andrea with a friendly amendment from Vanessa, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah, I know it, dude. Okay, so that motion passes unanimously. Wonderful. Thank you, Rochelle, for all your work on that. You really are astounding. Okay, looking at 2.03, presentation and discussion of proposed share curriculum, the draft lesson puberty and how a pregnancy happens. And this item is for possible action.
Okay. Click onto this lesson. And as the previous lessons, we have the both of our state content standards and the national sex ed standards listed at the top to refer to. I won't go through and read them verbatim. The objectives have remained throughout. These are obviously different for this lesson, but I'm kind of, if you notice, I try and keep the same format. So describe how puberty prepares the biological male body for potentials to reproduce. Describe how puberty prepares the biological female body for potential to reproduce. Define sexual intercourse within the context of human reproduction. Describe the process of human reproduction by identifying the correct order of steps involved in conception. Describe what cells are involved in human reproduction, sperm and egg. Explain at least 2 ways in which pregnancy can happen that do not include sexual intercourse. Name at least 2 reasons why someone might choose to use one of these methods, and define the term abstinence. The 2 videos. And speaking of the videos, a side note that I learned today, When I share the videos from YouTube, I can actually choose where the video starts at. So I apologize for being behind on that tech note. I did not know that. I learned that today. So I will go through and make sure that they start at the right time. But just so you all know, when I do, when these are adopted or any lessons are adopted with new videos, I do make sure that I tell all the counselors too to please bring up the videos to make sure, one, it's the correct video, and two, the pre-ad is done. So just a little background and safety. So a little lesson prep, how a pregnancy happens activity. It can be in small groups, make enough copies for one set per group. Students will need scissors and glue. Copies of the exit slip if you choose to use it for each of your students, or you can have them respond on the back of the index card used for the anonymous questions. The lesson intro has remained the same. Share is important for everyone in the class. The goal is for every one of you to feel that these classes relate to you in your life. This curriculum and resulting class discussions are intended to be respectful and inclusive of many perspectives and allow all students to see themselves and understand their own health and sexuality. The purpose of Share is to assist you in making informed choices and avoid behaviors that put you at risk. All questions are welcome. If you don't feel comfortable asking in class, I provide a paper for anonymous questions, or you may talk with me later. And then I have the use of slang terms again. If students use slang words, keep in mind that they may be the only language they've ever heard before this class. They also may just be trying to get a rise out of you, since you won't know their motivation. Should they use a slang term, gently correct them, remind them that we are using the correct anatomical terms like scientists, and ask them to continue. For example, if they were to say balls for testicles, there's likely to be some laughter. Simply say, and what is the word we learned for balls? And restate using the term testicles. And I do add this because this is a concern with our teachers and our counselors, as what do we do when they use different terms or slang. So moving on to the lesson, explain to students that the focus of the lesson is how puberty can prepare the human body for the potential to reproduce. Puberty and how pregnancy happens. Ask who remembers what puberty is. We talked a little bit about it in the first lesson and in fourth grade. When our bodies start releasing special hormones from the pituitary gland, when a body begins going through puberty, many changes occur. Two of the changes are the male body, a body with testicles, begins producing sperm. Not born with sperm when puberty begins, can produce several million sperm a day. The female body, a body with a uterus, which is born with all the, and I put immature eggs they will ever have, typically starts their menstrual cycle, and that starts their period. As many of our kids are more familiar with that term, but we're going to use them interchangeably. Watching a short video on the menstrual cycle, tell them you'll be asking a few questions about the video, so pay close attention. And then onto the video. And then after the video review, ask students, what is the menstrual cycle, the monthly process that happens in a female's body to prepare for a possible pregnancy? That's the answer we're seeking, something along those lines. And a slide of the parts that were also discussed in the video. What are some things that happen during the cycle? Probe for any of these. Release of an egg from the ovaries, thickening of the uterine wall, PMS symptoms, shedding of the thickened uterine wall through bleeding called menstruation, also known as the period. More info to share with students. Hormonal fluctuations drive the changes that occur during the menstrual cycle. If pregnancy does not occur, the egg is not met by a sperm and fertilized, the body sheds the extra lining of the uterus. The blood and tissue leave the uterus through the cervix and exit the body through the vagina. The purpose of the thickened uterine walls is to prepare for a fertilized egg and pregnancy to begin. So having this slide up and having that discussion. What happens when the egg does not get fertilized? And then moving on to the pregnancy and reproduction explained video. While watching the video, have students pay attention to what is needed for a pregnancy to occur. Check for questions of anything included in the video. Slide 3, as you're asking questions, click on the PowerPoint for each term, answer the questions below. What were the 2 things the video said were needed to start a pregnancy? Probing for egg, ovum, and sperm, or egg/ovum, either or. Who remembers where sperm are made? Probing for testicles. Where are the eggs/ovum made? Probing for ovaries. And then steps of fertilization. Sperm from the testicles get inside the vagina. If asked, how does that happen? Tell students you'll get into that in a few moments and to hold the question. An egg comes out of one of the ovaries. Ovulation, this happens approximately once a month. Sperm swim up into the uterus and into both fallopian tubes looking for an egg. If the sperm finds an egg, they all try to get inside. Usually only one sperm does, and then no other sperm can get inside. When an egg has a sperm inside, the egg has been fertilized. And then moving on, fertilization of the egg takes it by step. Fertilize means adding something to make a living cell grow. Once the cell is fertilized, though, pregnancy hasn't begun. One last step has to take place. The fertilized egg goes into the uterus and tries to attach itself, implementation, to one of the walls of the uterus. If successful, a pregnancy begins. If not successful, it breaks apart and leaves through the vagina. And then moving on to how pregnancy happens activity. Students work as partners or in small groups, pass out one set of the reproductive cards and one diagram. Students cut cards out and place in the correct spot on the diagram. Provide enough time to cut cards. Model a quick way to cut and glue on diagram. 10-ish minutes. Go over answer key and students self-correct. And then this is the activity. Have them complete how pregnancy happens. And say something like, you've done a great job remembering how sperm get inside the uterus to try to create a pregnancy. The video we watched a little bit ago said that there were 3 ways that this can happen, and who remembers what they were? So 3 ways to create a pregnancy: penis, vagina, sexual intercourse, artificial insemination, and in vitro fertilization. So after that question, probing for penis, vagina, sexual intercourse. And then the explanation, the insertion of the male's penis into the female's vagina. Artificial or alternative insemination, when a healthcare professional helps someone become pregnant without them having penis, vagina, sexual intercourse. The healthcare provider might insert sperm-filled semen into the vagina to try to carry a pregnancy or create a pregnancy. And in vitro fertilization, the healthcare provider takes an egg from an ovary and inserts sperm into it to fertilize the egg. That egg is placed up into the uterus in the hopes that it will attach itself to the wall of the uterus, called implementation. Can anyone think of a reason someone might choose one of the alternative methods instead of penis, vagina, sexual intercourse? And probing for answers such as, if a couple, one partner has testicles and one has ovaries, is trying to have a baby, and after unsuccessful attempts, they need some help. If a person with a uterus gets older, 40 plus, it can be more challenging to become pregnant. Therefore, they may choose one of the alternative methods to increase their chances of success. If a lesbian couple or a couple in which both partners have a uterus wants to have a baby and one partner wishes to become pregnant, there may be a question about gay couples. So this is a note to the teacher, right? Or a couple in which both partners have testicles, wanting to have baby adoption or surrogacy. And I do have those questions quite often when I'm teaching 5th graders. If someone with a uterus wants to carry a pregnancy, but either does not have a partner with a penis and testicles or does not want to have a penis vagina intercourse in order to become pregnant, it's another option. And then abstinence. The focus has been on how a pregnancy happens, but we also need to address the topic of abstinence. Choosing to have sex for the first time is a big decision that's very personal. People think about lots of different things: religious, spiritual, and moral beliefs, family and personal values, desire, love, and/or relationships. Whatever your reason is, it's important to wait until you're sure you're ready to have sex. Many teens who've had sex say they wish they had waited. And just because someone has had sex before doesn't mean that they have to do it again. People can be abstinent, not have sex at any time for any reason, and some people choose to never have sex. That's totally okay too. And then this is our definition that we've used throughout. This is a little blurry, not quite sure why. Sexual abstinence is defined as refraining from all forms of sexual activity and genital contact, such as vaginal, oral, and anal sex. An abstinent person is someone who has either never had sex or someone who has had sex, but who has decided not to continue having sex for a period of time. Abstinence is the only 100% effective way to prevent sexually transmitted HIV, other sexually transmitted diseases, or infections in pregnancy. And then the little sub-bullets, sex when a person's genitals touch another person's genitals, mouth or anus, and pregnancy most commonly results from vaginal sex. And virginity versus abstinence. Oftentimes students confuse the two, so make sure to point out that abstinence or being abstinent is not the same as virginity. Virgin is someone who has never had sex. And where can you go if you have more questions? Parent or guardian, trusted adult, healthcare provider. And then an exit slip. When a sperm gets inside an egg, it's called what? And what does an egg with a sperm inside it have to do before a pregnancy can start? And this is the activity. This is the answer sheet, but this is activity. And that's it.
Thank you, Rochelle. I found this lesson right in line with the conversations I've had with my own kids at the beginning of 5th grade. So thank you very much. Do we have comments? I see people gathering. Kelly, thanks for being ready to go.
Okay, first thing, I liked the lesson as well. The easiest thing to deal with first is, I think on page 10, it's right below the slide of 3 ways to create a pregnancy. I didn't catch this until you were reading it out loud. But under the bullet that's in vitro fertilization, you wrote that the egg is placed into the uterus and the hope that it will attach itself into the wall, called implementation. Isn't that implantation? Am I wrong? Implementation, I don't think is the right word, but
I looked it up, Kelly, and there were academic articles that referred to in vitro as implementation, whereas when it attaches itself to the wall, it was referred to as implantation. But because I thought the same thing and I looked it up.
learned something new today. Okay, and then on page 8, slide 6, fertilization of the egg. This is just for me, an adult. Part of me has no idea what's going on in this picture, like with the turquoise, and I don't know if it even matters. But I looked at it and I looked at it again, and then I'm just sitting here with you and I'm like, what is going on here anyway? So I don't know what what everyone else thinks about it, but that just, I wanted to ask, kind of, I don't know. I didn't love it.
Thanks, Kelly. Andrea, do you have anything to say about that for us?
So this is Andrea Thompson for the record. Are you referring to like what is actually like in the turquoise bubble there, like in the ovary?
Yes, I guess so. I mean, there's no label on it, and really, really small are a bunch of words that I know that kids are going to be like, what? So yeah, like I guess what's going on there, and is it in the notes, or is there a better way to show that? I guess I get that cells are dividing and stuff, but I'm just confused. It looks odd.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you definitely have a good point that probably labeling some of the things would be helpful. And I mean, I think what you're trying to show is this, you know, an egg forming in the ovary and then coming out of the ovary into the fallopian tube and how the cells are dividing, but perhaps just labeling it more clearly would be helpful. I mean, there's a lot of pictures that will display something similar to this. So I think it's even possible that you could find something different. It just depends on like what you're trying to show. This actually doesn't show fertilization of an egg as like the showcase. I mean, I can see the small sperm there, which is in the fallopian tube fertilizing the egg, but this is kind of showing what happens even after. So, I mean, I guess it's really up to what we're trying to show.
Annie, can I ask for your input? Because I end up, when I'm teaching it to fifth graders, we end up having a discussion about this. And I don't know if it's just because of the questions that they've asked based on what I'm talking about. But first of all, as it said in the lesson, I always find it interesting, and so do the students, when we talk about females are born with all the eggs that they're ever going to have, immature eggs, right? But boys do not have sperm until they are beginning puberty and start puberty. So we have that, right? So we talk about that. And then we talk about, because they are fascinated with pregnancy and how it happens, and not even the how it happens, but this, like, what does it look like? What is it, So I think I probably took it like, oh, this is really helpful for me, because, when I'm having the discussion with them. So I am very open to finding different diagrams that are clearer.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. And I mean, if you, as the teacher, say, okay, well, like the very first circle, like that's the egg being released, then there's fertilization, and then you see it dividing. But I'm serious. In the turquoise, is that like just all the eggs that the female has? Like, is that what that's supposed to be in there? Because I guess if that might be my only problem, maybe we label all the existing eggs within the female body. I'm just curious what that is. I could see a kid going, so what's that? I'm confused. So I guess that's what I'm saying. If those are the existing eggs, if I follow the steps, yeah, maybe that's all I need clarification on.
Kelly, could I kind of answer that for you? I actually like the teal thing there because it's an attention getter. Your eyes are going to automatically go to and be like, oh, whoa, what is that? And more often than not, Rochelle's right, you will have somebody that will ask, what's going on in there? And that's a perfect way for you to reintroduce or rephrase. Well, we talked about how a female is born with all their immature, we said eggs. I can't remember which one. Yeah, not mature yet eggs,
Yeah.
whichever word we said there, and be like, and then you could easily prompt that back to them. So if we know that, what does this represent to, like, you could ask them that, so that this way they can also disseminate the knowledge themselves and be more involved with the lesson, because we know anytime a kid's more involved in the lesson, they're going to learn more from it. So I actually really like it there, because it's, like I said, it's going to get their attention. It's going to make them one or two of them ask questions, which in turn just makes the lesson more engaging for them.
Kelly Roper, for the record, can we, in the teacher's notes, like if they're not labeled on the slide, in the teacher's notes, can we make it abundantly clear this is what's going on and that kind of stuff?
That would make sense. And I'm seeing Andrea Thompson shake her head yes. Sarah Linda, did you have something that you?
Sarah Linda Kaiser, for the record, that was going to be my recommendation too, because I love that explanation, Manny. And I, if I'm correct, you didn't create these graphics; they came from somewhere else. So it really isn't just a matter of going in and adding some arrows. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I'm not concerned about it, but I think it would be helpful in the teacher's notes, just in case some teacher didn't have exactly the same visual understanding of this as we did. If it's unclear, that would seem like a logical place to put an explanation.
Thank you for that. I tend to agree with Sarah on that. And I do find in the text of the notes that I'm reading or supporting this graphic, I do find it's well connected. Okay.
Yeah, and this is Andrea Thompson, for the record. You could also, I mean, if it's really looking for attention getting, I mean, you could even add in the teacher's notes. I mean, I'd have to look this up off the top of my head. I think someone born with a uterus or ovaries has probably well over 1 million eggs that they're born with, but only like, 250 or 300 of those will actually become mature eggs. And that's really what you're seeing in that graphic is, this maturation process that can sometimes turn into like a cyst, which then releases that egg. So I think putting some interesting facts in there that would be good for this age group would probably be helpful for someone teaching this, as more of like attention getting if they find those things fascinating. So
That's a really interesting proposal. I think I like that, like to put additional information for the instructor. Manny?
I had just a few recommendations also. First though, Rochelle, just a quick clarifying question. I didn't think about this on any of our previous ones, but anytime that we have a slide with multiple things, information on it, I guess I would say, like on slide 8, are they all going to appear at once, or is it going to be like as you press? Okay, just wanted to make sure on that part. So then the other 2 things that I wanted to look at was on page 11. When let's see, it is if a lesbian couple or a couple in which both parents have a uterus wants to have a baby and one partner wishes to become, but on that bullet point, we talk about adoption or surrogacy. I think maybe we add a little point at the bottom of that that explains what a surrogacy is, because I automatically know, I can already see that somebody's going to ask, well, what does that mean? And if somebody doesn't know or doesn't know what to say, they're going to go completely off script. And then on page 12, I was hoping to bring this back to the committee to see what they said, or if we had already potentially defined this. When we talk about virginity versus abstinence, the bullet point right below it where it says virgin is someone who has never had sex, are we only referring to vaginal sex or penis and vaginal sex, or are we referring to all forms of sex?
Well, on the definition of abstinence, Manny, we have sex. See the little bullet at the very bottom right here? I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, yeah.
Sex
Okay.
when a person's genitals touch another person's genitals, mouth, or anus. That's how you all defined sex.
Okay.
So you want to bring it back to that? Do you want?
I think maybe we just clarify that, because
Okay.
I mean, just knowing how some of our kids think, they're automatically going to think that sex is going to be normal, like penis and vagina sex.
Uh-huh.
And so maybe just clarifying that virginity is somebody that's never had any type of sex, or I don't know what proper wording to use on that, but just make sure we
So-
kind of clarify that in the teacher notes.
That is, maybe we can do that. This definition is one that's been its own agenda item and been approved for the entire curriculum and across all grade levels. And that's something that we keep kind of stumbling over over and over again. So I'm not disagreeing, Manny. I think you make an excellent point, and virginity and our definitions of this is a struggle every time we come across it. I'm just leery. We've been directed before to be like, when we discuss that, we'll discuss it for the whole curriculum, not necessarily for one. I'm going to go to Sarah Linda and then Kelly.
Sorry, Rochelle, and Sarah Linda Kaiser for the record here. I'm confused about whether we're talking right now about our definition of abstinence or the bullet point below it. I can't see that on my screen, or we talk about virginity. Can help someone clarify which. I don't think I didn't understand Manny to be wanting to redefine abstinence. I thought we were talking about what virginity was. Am I wrong?
No, that's correct, Sarah Linda. It's in the teacher notes right below that is what I'm talking about. It's it says that virgin is someone who has never had sex. So if you were to scroll down on that, Rochelle, for them to see, it would be right there. And that's what I was talking about, was that part right there.
Thank you.
And when I went, oh, sorry, Sarah Linda, and I was just to add on to that clarifying piece, was saying, when Manny asked that really good question about when we're talking about sex, what are we referring to take it back to that definition of how you all defined sex on the definition of abstinence. So we're keeping a consistent message.
So-
Go ahead, Sarah.
sorry, I know you were going to Kelly or somebody else. So I guess my question is there a consistent or specific definition of virgin that we should be using? We have our abstinence, and I don't know the answer to this. Is a virgin someone who has never had any of the kinds of sex that are part of our abstinence? Or is a virgin someone who has never had vaginal sex, which I think is circled back to what Manny was asking.
Right.
Well, and I think that goes back to our whole definition, Sarah, of when we talked about abstinence. Abstinence has different meanings to different people. And we went, I think, circles around this because in the high school lesson, we had to make sure it was notated that abstinence means different things to different people. And it was so important that if they are going to engage in sexual activity, that they both have an understanding of each other's definition of abstinence. And that was part of consent in their discussions and everything that was happening. So I think it also goes back because I've read a lot of the same about the definition of what a virgin is. It depends. So
Right. It's
clear
not
as
a
mud.
physical thing. It's a,
Uh-uh.
exactly, it's a social construct.
There you go.
Okay. Kelly?
Kelly Roper, for the record, I was just going to point out what Sarah Linda did, which was we are not dealing with the abstinence definition, but just virginity. And I don't know that, and I could be wrong, but I don't feel like we've ever used the word virgin or virginity in any of these lessons. I feel like that was the first time I'd seen it. And if we circled back to the definition, I agree, because I think the whole point in our definition of abstinence, making all of those disclaimers, clearly a female body has a hymen. That was usually like you were a virgin when you lost your hymen, right? Or you lost your virginity when you lost your hymen. But then I think the reason why we added vaginal, oral, anal sex was because the idea of like that is sexual activity. And so you're right, it's clear as mud. So maybe if we just circle back to the definition, clearly people might disagree and say, well, I've never had vaginal sex. Okay, but like the risky behavior and all the other stuff is around those other activities as well. So, I mean, if we're getting into touchy issues by just even dealing with virginity at all, I mean, I don't know how people feel about taking it out, but I also feel like it's okay to circle back to our definition personally.
So Kelly, I made sure to put it in the lesson because kids ask all the time. So is that the same thing as being a virgin?
Yeah.
When we're talking about abstinence in the old curriculum? And I have to be very clear and explain because it's not necessarily talked about in our old curriculum, but I don't want them to leave with incorrect information that abstinence and virginity are the same thing.
Well, then I would think that circling back to the definition, and I don't know if in 5th grade it's appropriate to do what we've done in high school clearly, which is it means different things to different people. I would just circle back.
Okay. Thank you for that point, Kelly. Yep, Lydia?
Could it just be a teacher's note that says if students ask about virginity, then respond, virginity means different things to different people, pretty much a virgin is someone who has never had sex. An abstinent person is someone who's not engaging in sex right now, period. But it's something that just information for the teacher to address if it comes up that often. But again, that clear as mud type thing, it's like, well, do we introduce it and then we leave them hanging with that in 5th grade and we never come back to it again for the rest of thing? Or is it just something that if it comes up, we know that all teachers have the same response to give? I don't know. Just a thought.
Andrea Thompson.
That's Andrea Thompson for the record. I think this is all good information. I would just put for the teachers know, a virgin is someone who's never had sex as defined by our definition of sex. in the curriculum. So I think if you put that in there, it makes it very clear what it is. I think it will come up because this is the more common term that we hear from young people this age. So I think if we just, put that into the teacher's notes, then we're making it clearer of what that is. And we're not deviating from our definition either.
Thank you for that. And I think that echoes what Kelly was saying, circle back, circle back, circle back. Excellent. Further thoughts? Okay. Did we lose our audio?
No,
We
we're
can still
here.
hear you.
Okay. All righty. I think we've talked it out. Maybe we'll come back. Okay, we've talked it out. All right, let's move along. Never mind.
Oh, no, I just wanted, Andrea Thompson, for the record, I wasn't sure what the public comment for the email that we received about puberty, but I just wanted to put on for the record that there was a concern that these topics were more appropriate when a child has entered puberty. And I just wanted to put on the record that for puberty, for those born as a girl is typically ages 8 through 12. And for those born as a boy, it could be ages 9 through 14. So that's typically even grade 3 to 4 potentially. And there's also information about precocious puberty. There's lots of new studies coming out that our populations in general are starting puberty at younger ages, breast development, and really that's being triggered by hormonal changes in the body. So these are very appropriate conversations and content to be shared with young people at this age and even younger, to be honest. And all of these studies were done either by the American Academy of Pediatrics or the Mayo Clinic. So I just wanted to have that for the record. But if we have no other conversation, I would be prepared to make a motion.
Okay, thank you for making that statement, because it's absolutely true that I'm finding for my own kids, I'm needing to start talking about this. Like
Yeah, it
5th
comes
grade
up
is the
faster than you
reminder.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not seeing any hands for public comment. Luis, do we have any other public comment tonight so far for this item?
No, not at the moment.
Thank you, sir. And everyone's read and unread, and now we'll reread our previous comment and go for it, Andrea.
All right, so Andrea Thompson, for the record, I propose that we put forth this proposed lesson plan to the Washoe County School District School Board with just a few minor changes. One on page 8, that we include in the teacher's notes, information on what is happening in that diagram, which I can provide to be medically accurate of what is happening within that follicle and that corpus luteum. That way, if those questions do come up, the teacher can be prepared to answer with accurate medical information about what's happening in that diagram. Also on page 11, defining what is surrogacy. And then on page 12, adding to the end of the definition of virginity to refer back to the definition that we have outlined as the definition of sex. That's my motion.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have a second? Stephanie, do I see your finger moving?
Stephanie Schumann, I second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Thumbs up. Okay, that's good. Okay, any public comment, Luis, before we vote?
No public comment at the time.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion proposed by Andrea Thompson, seconded by Stephanie, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. So thank you. That motion passes unanimously. Well, hooray, hooray. Wonderful. I'm looking at the time here at 6:40, and I would like a 5-minute break. Does that work? Okay, so we will reconvene at 6:45. Thank you, everyone. And if you're virtual, you'll turn your camera off. It is 6:47, so we're going to move along if we're ready. Okay.
I think we're ready, Ashley.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so I think we're looking at 2.04, presentation and discussion of proposed share fifth grade curriculum draft lesson liking and loving. And this item is for possible action.
Okay, Rochelle Proctor for the record. Let's go. Again, standards at the top. Objectives of this lesson: define what self-love is and how it relates to relationships with others. Describe the difference between liking and loving. Define sexual orientation and its most common categories. Demonstrate that they can identify a trusted adult with whom they can speak about sexual orientation, among other sexually related topics, and differentiate between sexual orientation and gender identity. And we have to the videos, the reflection in me, and another pep talk from Kid President to you, and the like love chart activity. Again, index cards for anonymous questions, and paper for each student to make a like love T chart. The lesson intro is the same as the previous ones, as well as the use of slang words. So I'm just going to scroll on down. Liking and loving lesson. So say something like, you're going to be going into sixth grade soon and may begin to hear other students express feelings for others. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between liking and loving. And we're going to start off by talking about how we love ourselves. So teacher note, and I just pulled it from Psych Today. 3 major science-backed benefits of practicing self-love: increased resilience, increased productivity, and decreased stress. Again, this is teacher notes, so this isn't going in front of the kids. And have students think of someone who loves them. Ask them why that person might love them or what specifically they might love most about them. Students can share with the group if they feel comfortable. If not, that's perfectly okay. Next, ask students to reflect on the question, do you love yourself? And this could lead to conversations about what love means, which we'll get to in the lesson. 3 types of self-love remind students that as they are going through puberty, so many things are changing: how they see themselves, how they see others, their feelings, their bodies. Puberty can be awkward, and it's important to take care of ourselves and practice self-love. So looking at mental, loving our brains. Asking for examples, what that would be. You're good at math, solving puzzles, reading, etc. Physical, loving our bodies. Example, I'm fast, I can jump high, I have strong arms. And I don't know what happened to this. My teacher note right there, I'm not quite sure. Emotional, loving our feelings and our character. Examples could be, I'm kind to my sister, I smile at people. And then ask, which kind of self-love is the hardest and easiest and why? Ask, do you think these thoughts will change as you grow up? So moving on, and it brings us to the video, the reflection in me. It's easy to say, love yourself, but oftentimes we are our own worst critic. And moving on after the video. The slide 3, just remember, no one is you. That's your superpower. And then as we move into, we've talked a little about what it means to love ourselves. Let's look at the different feelings we may have for others. And the like love activity, it's a T chart. So like love things, we're going to talk about things. Pass out paper to each student. Students complete individually. Have students make a T chart on their paper, just as it is on the slide. And teacher will do the same on the board. Label the left column like and the right love. Under the like heading, tell students they have about 60 seconds to make a list of things they like. These things cannot be people. They must be objects, activities, places, etc. And then stop them after about a minute. You can also read the room. I mean, you might have some kids that are really working hard and you don't want to stop that either, but you just don't want to let them hang around too long doing it. Under the love heading, it's going to be the same thing. Tell students they have 60 seconds to make a list of things they love. These things cannot be people. They must be objects, activities, places, etc. And then stop them about 60 minutes or 60 seconds in. Ask for volunteers to share what they put in the like column. Fill in their responses on the board chart, the one you made on the board. Remind students to be respectful of others' likes and loves. Not everybody likes the same things. Ask for volunteers to share what they put in the love column. Once the table has been filled, ask students what they noticed about the lists. And the responses might include something like, some people put things in the like column while others put them in the love column. The lists are very similar or they're very different. And ask what they thought about the activity. Oh, there's a typo. Was it easier to think of things you liked or things you loved and why? And then record some key points from their feedback. It may include references to frequency with which they do something. The more they do something, the more they like it or love it. The duration relating to it could be something they do every day. Emotional connection or something they're good at. These are, again, just examples of student responses. So then from there, from the liking and loving the things T-chart, we're going to move on to people. And this one is done as a whole group. So draw a new T-chart on the board and again, label with like and love. Ask students who are some of the people in their lives that we might like and who are some of the people that we might say we love. And these lists will always be different with different groups. Expect some to say that some people can be liked and loved. Include those people in both lists. Remind students that these must be people they personally know. They cannot be a celebrity, etc. You know what that list would look like, right? So here's an example of like the like column might be a new student, a cousin, a coach, the school custodian, a new friend, teacher, a friend's parent, religious leader, camp counselor, and perhaps on the love column, it would be a friend you've had since you were young, cousin, sibling, parent, a grandparent. Again, just examples. Ask something like, so what's the difference? How do you know whether you like someone or when you love them? And then have a discussion. And if it's not mentioned, share that our feelings are not something we can decide to feel. We just like or dislike someone or something. While we may end up liking someone we didn't before or liking an activity we hated at first, we can't make ourselves like or love the activity or person. Discuss why this may be. As we get older, our feelings start to change. We may experience a type of romantic love that we don't have when we're younger. It's hard to explain. It's something you know when you feel it. Romantic relationships are different than friendships. People may have boyfriends, girlfriends, partners. When older, they may choose to live together or get married. Some adults may decide to have children or they may not. Some people may want to have these types of relationships starting in middle school, some in high school, and some later in life or not at all. And then ask what makes these types of relationships different from friendships or your relationship with your family. And again, probing for answers similar to you do different things together. You feel like being with that person all the time. You like doing nice things for them. You think of what they might want to do before what you might want to do. You hold hands or you kiss. And at some point, most people experience these feelings over the course of their lifetime. Moving on to slide 5. So saying something like, sometimes we feel this way about people who are a different gender than we are. Our gender has to do with being male, female, a combination, the two, or neither. Our gender identity is our inner knowledge of what our gender is. It's connected to sexual orientation, but it's not the same thing. When someone is attracted to a person of another gender, that's being called heterosexual. You may also hear the word straight. And then slide 6. Sometimes we'll have these feelings for people who are our same gender. This is called being gay. Some gay women will call themselves lesbians, and sometimes we might have feelings for people of all genders. This is called bisexual. Explain that our understanding of which gender or genders we feel love and attraction for is called our sexual orientation. And slide 7. Even though the phrase sexual orientation has the word sexual in it, in many cases, people have strong feelings of love before feelings of sexual attraction or before acting on those feelings. You don't need to have done anything sexual with someone to know your sexual orientation. As you start going through puberty, your hormones, those natural chemicals in your body, will start going up and down. This means you may feel really intense emotions from time to time, both positive and negative. This may also be when you start to feel more intense love. During puberty, it's common to have feelings for people of your same gender and for people of a different gender. Sometimes that's part of understanding your sexual orientation. Sometimes it's not, and you'll have feelings that come and go. So you may not know what your orientation is right away or until you're older, and that's okay. Explain that while love seems like a straightforward term, we say, I love you all the time. We talk about how we love this TV show, this shirt. It's really a complicated topic, and we just touched on it. And then growing up can be hard sometimes. We could all use a little pep talk. And then closing, today you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Rochelle. That's such a great way to end the lesson. It's very positive and supportive, and I really, really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Do we have discussion? I'm sure we do. It's just beautiful. I wish my older kiddo could have gone through 5th grade with this lesson. Yes, Manny.
I suppose I'll start us off. I would like on page 3, when we were talking about let me go back up to it real quick. When we're talking about the 3 types of love, maybe we have the teacher put up an example of it themselves, like mental, physical, and emotional love, because even though like we're saying that, I know that sometimes kids are still going to have trouble really understanding exactly what that means when we talk about it. So have them share out an example themselves of what it could be, or they can make up one generically. I know we have those examples, but something that like they could share themselves that will make it a little bit more personable. That way they can the kids will better relate to it. Because if we say some of those things, I'll be honest, it's going to be like, yeah, okay, everybody can say that. So if that makes sense.
So would you, and as you're saying that, Manny, it should have had a PowerPoint slide to go with it too, with the terms as we're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
So perhaps that could be some more, a teacher note, what would that look like to you? What are mental?
I would love if we actually put a slide up with that's shared, that said mental,
Physical.
and then like, even without giving the examples, like we have the teacher in the teacher's notes, it says share an example of those, and then we just had those displayed. I think that would be really, really good for that one.
Okay.
And then also on page 7, as we are going through and we were talking about the difference between liking and didn't liking, and how we might like something and then dislike it, but we don't know if this is love or if it's not love. I'll be honest, the first thing that kind of came to mind, and maybe this is just me with an adult brain, is how do they know the difference between like, love, and lust? Because some people they lust, but they don't even realize that it's love, or and they don't realize that they don't even like something. So I don't know if we should maybe put something in there for that, but as I was hearing you read it, that's right where my brain went. And again, that could be the adult brain, but maybe somebody else from the committee could maybe talk a little bit more about that part. Aside from that though, I thought this was a really, really good lesson. I really like it because it talks about the self-love, talks about going into sexual orientation. I think the only other thing is maybe add something at the very end that maybe talks about how every counselor every counselor, since they should be the one doing this, is an ally. That's somebody that you can talk to if you have questions about anything about maybe being gay or being a lesbian or LGBTQ at all. But I'm not sure exactly how we'd want that one to look. Aside from that though, Rochelle, I thought this was great.
Manny,
Thank
you
you,
want a
Manny.
slide? Oh,
Mhm.
sorry.
No,
You
go.
want like a slide of,
I
no, just
I think
a talking point.
I don't know. It might not hurt to have a slide at right before we get to our last two slides. Or maybe before the closing, if we say, hey, if you have questions about any of this, come talk to me individually. I'm not really sure how that one could look, but I
Okay.
think a mention of it somehow though, that way any kids that are curious or suddenly they go, oh, that could be me, and they're nervous about it. It just lets them know I'm an ally. You can come talk to me. I'm somebody that's the safe place for you, more or less. But however you guys want that to look. That was me. Sorry. Sorry. I'm gonna hold my hands over here. But
think-
yeah, just something like that. That would just let them know.
That is a good point to be explicit in, like, I am here, for you. Thank you, Manny. Okay, so I saw Stephanie and then Kelly.
She said, go ahead, Kelly. So this is Kelly Roper for the record. So on slide 3, which is page 4, I don't normally do this like visual, but the no one is you, that's your superpower. It looks clumped up. I would almost do no one is you ... and then move that is your superpower like over to the right. So it stands out and doesn't look like, why is that all on different lines? But I liked it. On page 9, slide 6, I think, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, some gay women will call themselves lesbians, and sometimes we might have feelings for people of all genders. This is called bisexual. It's not, is it? I thought that's pansexual. So
No.
I'm in my course of being on the committee.
Okay, so
I don't know.
Kelly, you're about to dive down into the depths of
No, I
queer
don't want to, but I don't
conversation.
wanna be wrong. I don't wanna be
Bisexual is the definition of that, and pansexual would be the definition, broadly, of feeling attraction and love toward all people and bodies, right? Well, not like 100% of all bodies that exist, right? But all people, regardless of gender, and there is a difference there.
So
And that
could
is
we
like
say,
the-
and sometimes we might have feelings for people of both genders, right? If you just say both instead of all.
No, I know, this is the conversations, right? All is absolutely the definition of bisexual, and pansexual is attraction and love has no attachment to gender at all. And I know it doesn't, which is why maybe we're not talking about pansexual right now, right? But that is the actual definition of bisexual.
This is where I recommend that you just, tell the counselor, hey, talk to me later. We'll get this clarified for you.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I take that off. I'm crossing that off on my, is it wrong? And then my only other thought is, this is 5th grade, and all of the images of people are all like adult. And so I just kind of was wondering, and it's most obvious, I feel like, in the picture of the 2 men. Like I just kind of feel like, I wonder if we could get pictures of kids that are more like them. My big pet peeve is when 30-year-olds play teenagers on TV. So this is kind of in the running there for me mentally. Like visually, I'd like to get like more age appropriate.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate your thoughtful contributions. Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Stephanie Schumann for the record. I also had a question about the bisexual, pansexual, so thank you for clarifying. I really appreciate that. I really loved the lesson. I think this is a topic that doesn't get enough attention. And I think the value and the input that was placed on self-love was just awesome. And if I would even love to add more slides to support it, because I just think this is such a vulnerable age. And I really appreciate the time that you took to put those slides in. I really would have to second Manny's thoughts on having the counselors provide some specific examples for themselves. I think it's really hard to conceptually think about how do I show myself self-love if you don't hear people demonstrate it about themselves. So to have that kind of visual in front of them, they may not hear that at home. They may not hear a parent or guardian say positive things about themselves. And so that modeling behavior would be, I think, really important for the counselors to add that. I really loved that, Manny. So I appreciated that. And I think that was the only thing, because I was just going to revisit bisexual and pansexual. So thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Any further comments? Yes, Vanessa?
Thanks. Thank you. Vanessa Vancourt for the record. I've had conversations with my daughters about the difference between a crush. I'm just thinking about the language that kids use. And for those of you who've taught this, I don't know if this needs to be added in here. So I wanted to open this up to the committee. But I've talked to my daughters about the difference between having affection for someone, having a crush, which in some ways reminded me of the like love exercise. So I'm wondering if anyone sees any value in adding other language that kids this age are using. Does that come up? Is a crush synonymous with liking someone? Is having affection for a friend different than romantic love? And this might just be semantics, but I really wanted to hear from those of you who've taught it, because that's the language I hear in my 5th and 7th grader. So just curious if there's any value in adding that, or is that, overthinking or over adding? Are they using language that isn't included here that might be worth having a conversation around?
Thank you. I think that's really valuable to bring up. I look forward to hearing from Manny and Rochelle. I would note my current high school senior, it was bias. Crush was not allowed to be used. Them and their peers always said, that's my bias. So I do hesitate to add specific slang because it'll be gone again in 30 seconds. But I would like to hear, maybe there's other things that we need to be hearing about.
So I would tell you that if we're talking about like any slang type of language that we're using, it's just like you said, Ashley, what they're saying now is gonna be now for the next maybe 4 or 5 years, and then it's gonna have to be revisited and that language is gonna have to change again. But if we really wanted to use language that a lot of our students are using, I understand the value of that. And I would say just go straight to TikTok and they'll tell you everything that you need to know about this. I'm not even joking. But Vanessa, I get the point that you're trying to make. I would say, I think if we just kept it with like and love, though, that way they can understand that having a crush is also liking somebody, but like loving somebody it is different. And I think, and maybe you said this, Rochelle, and I missed it, but you even talked about kind of the difference between like love somebody like in a romantic love, correct? Okay, so maybe just kind of emphasizing it and that part, like if you like somebody and it turns into romantic love, that could be also considered a crush potentially. But yeah, I don't know about maybe trying to add their just slang language in right now. Like it'll just change again.
I mean, could we have like just an asterisk for the teacher note that perhaps whatever the term is of the day, right? If it comes up, that they relate it to either or. I don't know if that's opening it, just for teacher information, because sometimes people will not go off of this. So if it's not mentioned, I don't know. I'm all over the place on that thinking, but
I would say then, Rochelle, what you could actually do is open it up to the kids. What does it mean to like somebody? When you like somebody, what do they like? How do you share it? Like, is it a crush? Is it this? And then let the kids define it for you. So that way you'll know exactly what to say and it can kind of carry on for years on end without us having to stick to language
Right.
that could change suddenly tomorrow.
Well, I always ask, so what's the current term, right? Because even with my big kids, I'm like, what? And they define it for me. I'm like, oh, huh? How did that come from that? You know what I mean? But
TikTok, I'm telling you.
I definitely appreciate that. And that reminds me of a study that showed that 12 to 14-year-old girls are the driving force of language change, bigger than any other demographic. Sarah Linda, right? That's why I say tight now at 37.
Yeah, Manny might have gotten there, but right. But Sarah Linda Kaiser for the record here. Manny, you might have gotten there already while my hand was up. But I'm wondering if that's a way to get at a little bit what you brought up initially, this idea of lust. I got to tell you, I think lust is a big word for 5th grade. And that is a deep dive into this. But this idea of the crush, of the really, really liking somebody, of, you know, whatever it is right now, that is kind of the 5th grade version of lust. And so it might be a way to get at that idea of somebody you just really, really have these strong sort of desirable feelings toward. And I wonder if the slang is a way to get there.
That's an excellent point. Thank you. Andrea Thompson?
I lowered my hand when you said that. Andrew Thompson for the record, Zoom. I think that's what I was getting at as well, as I think, you know, that could be when you get onto that page 7 of just asking, you know, like what terms are we using for when we like somebody, you know, and that could be a way where the teacher will then know what kind of slang language is being presented. And then, you know, they're making those connections as well, that we're talking about something similar. I did also want just from the healthcare perspective, I think when you're talking about like, I think it was on page 7 as well, about loving and liking and the difference. And, you know, you may feel this way and maybe you'll feel this way later. I think it's another good connection we could make to the hormones that are in their body. So maybe whether it's maybe putting in the teacher's notes or just making that connection that they're not just having these things willy-nilly, that this is, you know, partly because of these physical changes that are happening in their body. And I think that will help to make some connections, both for them of like why this is happening, and also to give people some grace as to why this is happening. So that could just be a place where we could make that connection between the lessons.
Thank you for that, Andrea. Kelly, thanks for waiting so patiently.
oh yeah, Kelly Roper for the record. I forgot to say this, and that is, I really loved that reflection video. I thought it was so sweet because I feel like so often people look at themselves in the mirror and they only see the flaws. And so I just thought it was a really cool video to have the reflection talk back and be like, but let me tell you all of the good things that you're not seeing. And I just thought that that was a really good reminder for kids, because it was very obvious she was seeing her flaws. And then to have her goodness or a person's goodness like put back at them, I thought that was an incredibly good video for the whole lesson.
Absolutely. Thank you. Luis, do we have any public comment for this item?
No, not on this item.
Thank you.
You have to have a
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh, I have to do the card. Okay. Why do I have to even put my
You'll
name
have
down?
to fill it out first and then you have to clean it.
I can't just ask.
No.
Why do I have to put my name?
That's the-
Okay, I'm not going to. I will look on this
She-
internet and see what I
she
can find out.
She can make public
I don't want
comment.
it, yeah, I don't want to be, with all the media and everything, I don't want to be targeted in any way, shape or form for asking any question. And putting all this down would totally identify me, and I would rather
Okay.
not do that, so.
Okay. Well, you are absolutely welcome if you're
Make
willing to
public
give your
comment.
name. Yeah, you can make your comment, and
That's all.
if you change your mind, we'll have public comment again at the end of this or on our next item as well. Okay. All right. So do we have further discussion or a possible motion? I'm ready. Manny. Is that you?
I might just add one last thing, Ashley.
Yeah.
So as I was going through reading it again, I think maybe we add one last slide at the very maybe at the very end or before we do the T-charts that we're very specific, where we say before you can like or love somebody else, you need to first be able to like or love yourself. That way we can just kind of hit back on that point of self-love and like self-care, more or less. I'm not sure where you guys want to put that or where would be the most appropriate place to put it, but I think just one more slide like that, Rochelle, would kind of just bring it back home for us. Maybe before slide 5, potentially. I'm not sure. Yeah.
You want it in front of the T chart or after the T chart?
I think after the T chart would probably be the most, would probably be the best way to put it. That way we can just kind of bring it back, because as soon as slide 5 hits, I feel like it kind of goes on to a slightly different topic. So maybe if we just put that right before slide 5, just letting them know.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And I forgot what I said. Oh, wait, that's right.
Before slide 5.
You before you like or love somebody else, you got to know how to like or love yourself. Yeah.
I think it seems nitpicky, but I do like that wording better than previously. I would not agree to wording that was like, you're not able to love others unless you love yourself, right? But I do like that you got to love yourself.
Yeah,
Okay.
what Ashley said, I agree.
Okay. Can you restate that for me, Ashley? I mean, I'll listen to it on the audio, but just while I'm sitting here, so I know.
Sure, yeah. Before you love others, take care of yourself and love yourself.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. I'm going to ask again, do we have public comment for this item?
No, not at the moment.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Do we have a motion? Do it.
Well, like you've done in the past.
Can I check and see, like for a motion, can I check and see that I have the comments correct or do you want me to do it the way and do a friendly amendment? What would you guys prefer?
I'm going to look to legal for that. I think generally you just make your motion and then we.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay. So Kelly Roper, for the record, I move that we accept this lesson. You know what? I'm gonna let Andrea do it. She does it better, or somebody else.
I would be prepared to make a motion, Andrea Thompson, for the record, if that's what you need. Okay. All right, so I propose that we present this proposed lesson plan to the Washoe County School District Board for possible approval, with some exceptions that we've discussed today. One being on page 3, that we also add in slides for each of the mental, physical, and emotional examples, and add into the teacher's notes, perhaps other examples that the teacher can give. That we add on page 7 some conversation points for the presenter to discuss slang terms that are current, and also perhaps add in information on explanation of why they may be feeling different ways to make connections to the hormone changes that are happening in their body. That we add a slide near the end of resources of who to talk to, similar to those slides that we have added to other previous lessons of trusted adults, healthcare providers, et cetera, if they're having concerns about any of the content discussed in the lesson plan. That we consider more age-appropriate photos, meaning that we're looking at photos that better reflect those in this age group. And then that change the formatting on slide 3 to make it look better, per what Kelly said in the feedback. So that's my Motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Vanessa, was it you waving your hand?
Second the motion, Vanessa Vancourt for
Thank-
the record.
Could I
Thank
add
you.
a amendment, please?
Mhm.
I'll
I would
hear it,
like to
Manny.
It was just a friendly amendment, I promise, that before slide 5, we add a slide stating how Ashley eloquently put, you have to love your, how did you say it, Ashley?
I don't know.
I can't make
Michelle
the
wrote it
amendment
down.
until after you said it.
It's in the record.
Before you love others, take care of yourself and love yourself. That's what I have.
Yes, I'd like to add a friendly amendment that before slide 5, we have one slide that says, before you love others, take care of yourself and love yourself.
After consideration, I will accept your friendly amendment.
And Vanessa, do you accept that also?
Oh, and I also accept the friendly amendment, Vanessa Vancourt for the record.
Get everything?
Thank you. Okay, and one last time, least, is there any public comment on this item?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. All right, so all in favor of the motion by Andrea Thompson, seconded by Vanessa Vancourt with the friendly amendment from Manny Magana, say aye or yes.
Aye.
I,
And any opposed, say no. Wonderful. So the motion passes unanimously. Again, excellent work, everyone. Thank you so much for your work on this. And I really appreciate the thoughtful discussion. Okay, so moving right along, we're looking at item 3.01, public comment. This would be general public comment.
We received general public comment electronically from Joseph Morabito.
Thank you, and everyone has had
And
access to
that is all.
Thank you. All right. So with that, let's see, 3.02 announcement of our next meeting will be Monday, November 8th, 2021. I look forward to working with you all again. And so now at 7:25 p.m. we adjourn.